Matthew is really worried. He's afraid the church might be doing it all wrong. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one of your members than for your whole body to go into hell. He speaks to the church there, right? Congregation like yours. So the hand, meaning one of our members, needs to be cut off to save the church. Who's it going to be today? You're laughing, he meant that. The church does stuff wrong all the time. And so do I. We had a whole watch list of wrongs that is listed in the gospel here. I do things wrong. I'm a chaplain in the Army Reserve, and for that commission I had to swear an oath. But also I'm a pastor in the church, right? And as such, we just heard a very strong word from Jesus. Don't ever swear an oath. That will only get you into trouble. Jesus very clearly states, do not swear an oath. Now, I could argue, as an officer, I don't really pledge obedience to authorities. I just pledge to defend the Constitution. So it's not a personal thing, more like an idea. But then again, all my enlisted soldiers, they swear their obedience. And they must, otherwise the army doesn't work. Doing it all wrong. Promises are a tricky thing. And Jesus continues in this list. So who of y'all is married? By show of hands. Good number. When I first started in the ministry, one of the first days in my training time there, my mentor and I went to a couple that was about to get married. And the fiance and my pastor mentor started making fun of me because I was still in my first marriage. My pastor mentor was in the second, and the couple that we met with, for one of them it was the second and the other one was on the third or so. And I was still in my first round, so they had fun with me. Beginner. Statistics show that in the U.S., 50% of first marriages end up in divorce. You've heard that number before. The number that you haven't heard is that 67% of second marriages and 74% of third marriages end up in divorce. So once you get into that habit, it gets easier to say bye-bye. Or you find yourself more, to word it positively, you find yourself more understand your needs and wants and stuff you don't want to put up with anymore. You can also view it as positive. But anyway, it's a reality. Moving on in Jesus' watch list of things that can become problematic, who of y'all has a phone? By show of hands. Who of you used your phone for a search this weekend? Who Googled something? Okay. Well, let me tell you. Leave your hands open, actually. Leave your hands up. The people that searched something this weekend on their phone. Okay. So, 1 in 5 mobile searches is for porn. Just so you know. Yeah, I just counted. There were quite a few. It's a reality of life. We pretend we don't know it, but we do. 1 out of 5. And that comes with pleasure, but also with a price. Puts a strain on relationships at times. Makes you struggle with your body image. It's Skittles for the eyes, it's not celery. It's made that way. Now, who recognizes the following quotes? You may yell the name of the person as soon as you recognize it. And if you can't hear tough words in church, close your ears. It was all bullshit. And they stuck together and they were vicious as hell. Huh. We're a bunch of suckers. I fired that sleazebag. The presidential podium in the East Room of the White House. Press conference. Where do you put your anger? Jesus challenges us with that. You have to express it when you feel it. You can't just bottle it up. You got to let it out. And I talked to the kids about earlier how to manage their feelings, right? And find the appropriate time for the right word. Not all of us manage to do that well. Our passage from Jesus' Sermon on the Mount touches on challenges. The challenges of anger like Trump, lust like a porn addict, divorce like every other marriage, and swearing like a soldier. So what are the 21st century manifestations of the anger, lust, divorce, and swearing that motivated the first century writer to name and address these problems? Well, in order to understand that, we first need to go back to Matthew's church. We need to look at the situation he spoke into. Because what the church needed at the time there in the first century was to have model citizens in their ranks. You couldn't afford sleazebags in the church because you were a persecuted minority. The Roman Empire cracked down on sects like ours. They crucify us, they burn us, they throw us into prison. So that's why the church had to be one where people were all good. We're the ones that don't get into trouble. We don't rattle anything. We're just nice model citizens. Because otherwise, they chop our head off. And we don't even want to go to the state authorities. We want to keep it all inside. The church council acted as a court. Who's on church council here? By show of hands? Consistory, whatever you call it.
Consistory.
All right. So there you are. So the church council, we heard in our passage, is the court. If you insult a brother or sister, means fellow parishioner, you will be liable to the council. Huh. Can you imagine that, if we did that? So if you see something on Facebook where one of the church says something bad or comments ugly on somebody else's stuff, the church council has to make a decision. Good times. That's what the church did, and they had to do that as a filter. Because if the church looks bad on the outside, the Romans come in and chop your head off. If the church can't maintain good order, the state may step in. Whereas we heard in the gospel, come to terms quickly with your accuser while you're on the way to the court with him, or your accuser may hand you over to the judge, and the judge to the guard, and you will be thrown into prison. Now let me be very clear. Neither in Matthew's days nor in our days does hell mean eternal damnation. But the challenges of law and sin are still very relevant. What is our response to the iniquities that are present in our society, which are fueled by a lack of caring for each other? Let's go through that list again. The anger. So when you're offering a gift at the altar, if you remember that your brother or sister has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother or sister, and then come and offer your gift. I hope that's what you're doing this morning. Because church is a place, we're not under attack, nobody's persecuting us, we're safe here. Our church is a place of celebration of reconciliation. That's what we do. We celebrate reconciliation. And you can't do that effectively if there's a grudge somewhere. Get that out of the way. So in the United Church of Christ, we celebrate diversity over identity. It's so much easier to say, this is who we are, and that's how you have to believe. And if you're not in that box, you're not part of us. No, we celebrate reconciliation and diversity.
Amen.
Yep.
Anger doesn't have room. You got to get that out of the way, as Jesus said. Not because we're afraid of the Romans, but because we know it's more truthful to the gospel. Moving on to the lust issue again. If your right eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. You know the challenge. Our eyeballs keep too long on stuff where they shouldn't be. I don't want to see any hands who couldn't answer honestly anyway. But the problem is with the eye. That's actual good news. The problem is with the one looking at the things they shouldn't be looking at. Because too many times churches turn that around and they say, because you dress that way, that's why you got raped. No. The hand that rapes, the eye that lusts are the problem. The perpetrator is the perpetrator.
Yeah.
Not the girl that dresses the way she feels more herself. The eye is the problem. That's good news. Don't rip them out. But let's name the problem where it is. It's in the eye. But then again, for an eye to be lustful, that doesn't mean sin. That's not a bad person. It is someone who doesn't have themselves under control the way they could. And sometimes it can be addictive. And we need to promote recovery and manageability. We need to separate the monster from the addict, the weak person from the one that is troubled. It's complicated. Let's not pretend there were easy answers in there. Moving on to divorce. Quite a few of you were married, I saw. And I know that quite a few of you are divorced. And I know that some are probably remarried. And the words that we had in the gospel are not nice about that. Want to hear some good news?
Yeah.
Yeah. All of a sudden, women are people. Because back in the day, like in ancient times, it was said to you, Jesus said, a man could just dismiss a woman with a letter.
Yeah.
A contractual obligation. You cancel our contract, you're gone. And that means you had no social security, no work, no nothing, no livelihood out on the street. Now, all of a sudden, a woman is a person. Because if you divorce her, still it's the man doing the divorcing, it's still a patriarchal society. But if the man does the divorcing, all of a sudden, the wife is not just an object you can dispose of. But you yourself have some liability and responsibility in that. You can't just lightly cancel that contract. It's still ancient Middle East, but it's a little better. All of a sudden, we're all people. At least that. Not quite equal, let's be honest. But it's ancient Middle East, right? And we've evolved, and we've grown better, and we know better now. But there's progress. And others around that time didn't see it that progressive. Now the swearing part. We got to make promises sometimes. We got to use strong language sometimes. And I truly believe that hiding your swear words between words that sound similar but don't say it is cheating. God knows that you mean God when you say gosh. Everybody knows you mean hell when you say heck. And Jesus very clearly says, let your word be yes, yes, or no, no. Anything more comes from the evil one. If it's right to say it. If it's wrong to say it, don't say it. And if it's not the right situation, deal with it. So, overall, sin is not living up to a covenant. It can be the covenant with yourself to manage your feelings the way you need to. It can be a covenant with your significant other to manage your attractions the way you need to. It can be the covenant of beginning or ending a marriage in a mutually fair way. Or the covenant of you and God, how you talk to one another or about one another. Live up to the covenant. And Moses put it very frankly. See, I set before you today life and prosperity, death and adversity. Life and prosperity, death and adversity. Which one do you choose? But the beautiful thing is, Moses said, see, I have set before you today. Oh, today. Today. That means, what is it? February 6th? 16th, 2020. Today. Life and prosperity, death and adversity. Today, in this decision that you make. Or in 5 minutes. This moment. Right now. You may have messed up yesterday. You probably have. I will mess up tomorrow. I will. Every day has the choice of life and prosperity or death and adversity. It's not that make that one decision and you're going to hell forever. It's simply not the question. Nobody ever asked that question in the Bible. It's not about good or bad. It's about living in the moment and doing the best you can. It's not eternal damnation or salvation. That was settled on the cross. The question is, how do we live our lives? How do we remain in the land of milk and honey? This is heaven. How do you live there? How do you celebrate reconciliation? That's the purpose of the church. Celebrate that reconciliation that is already there. That's where we are, in the promised land. No fear. No danger of hell. It's done. How do you live today? How do you live today? Life and prosperity, death or adversity. One day at a time. Or as we say in the Lord's Prayer, our daily bread. It's all about today. It's not about what you've done in the past. It's not about what's to come at the end. It's about living today. Today I find the resources that help me manage my anger. Today I reach out to my accountability partner and stay away from porn. Today I breathe, pause, and think before I speak to my significant other. Today I make no promise that I don't want to or cannot keep. So help me God. Amen.
Amen.